The Wire. I'm Elisha Vermani, and you're watching Seema Says, where The Wire's editor, Seema Chishti, gives you her take on the three big things hogging the headlines this week. So, first up, Seema, we have America's incursion in Venezuela. The president was captured. The president and his wife were flown to New York. How do you see this playing out? What's happening?
It was quite a spectacular sort of weekend and a start to the new year. A lot of people have described this as living in very precedented times because America has been doing this business of gunboat diplomacy and behaving like this with countries. But the last time it was so audacious. You walk into a country and you pick up the president and you, not because an international law has been violated, but laws which the America cites has been violated, and you pick them up, was in 1990, just on the 3rd of Jan, ironically. So that's 36 years ago. They did this with Manuel Noriega, and this happened in Panama. But happening now is, of course, a revival of all this, the Monroe Doctrine and what's called the Roosevelt Corollary in 1904, that there'll be a lot of aggressive behavior in their backyard, if you like, or the Western Hemisphere. So there were no real surprises, but it comes in a completely different geopolitical context. So the way I see this attack and this invasion on Venezuela, and now an attempt to backtrack as well, has been happening, that it's not really Iraq style, it's their own way of doing things. I think there are three things that dominate. One is the need for hydrocarbons that America has, minerals, critical minerals that are needed for America, it thinks, for its progress and its economy. And number three is the geopolitical sort of situation. Venezuela has more oil than even Saudi Arabia. And this is not me saying it or others. Trump himself has said it. He used the word oil 20 times in his press conference, in his rather longish press conference after the invasion. And he kept going on about how it will be privatized and big American companies will help fix the oil infrastructure. That's quite ominous for the people of Venezuela, who oil was nationalized much earlier in 1976. And after that, particularly with the coming of Hugo Chavez in 1999, a lot of, a socialization of Venezuela took place, and that had dramatic impacts on the rest of Latin America and that region. So they are asserting things, of course, because of the oil, but something which has not been stated so explicitly by Trump, but is very clear for all watchers, is the way the Chinese influence has been growing in the region. Russia also has stuff there happening with defense, etc. But Chinese influence has been very clear, heralded through trade, very easily visible through trade. In 2000, the China trade with the Caribbean and Latin America was $12 billion. It's now up to $538 billion. And not just that, they have locked in kind of deals, etc., with lithium reserves in South America. And there's a lithium belt. You can actually see it in the map if you see it. So and Venezuela is not the end. Trump has named some 7 other countries. He's talking about Cuba, Colombia, various other countries in Latin America, in South America. So if all this is happening and they're going to extend this kind of invasion or this sort of gunboat diplomacy or go about like, this cowboy raids on countries, then it's clearly also with a view to either switch this last attempt of a dying superpower, to switch the geopolitical kind of balance, to try and change that a bit, and then to establish control over lithium. So I think it's very clear that the US has upended all rules. And of course, the international order has also been a myth, a lot of people would argue. But it was actually premised on US restraint for a couple of decades. But that restraint is gone. And I think Greenland is worried. Other countries are worried. And technically speaking, he could go into Nigeria, he could come to India, he could do anything, anywhere. But mercifully, the United Nations Security Council is taking this up on the 5th of January. So maybe later today, US time, early morning on the 5th of January. Yeah, we may hear something else, but we know that it'll be discussed, and that's very important, but United States has a veto power.
Talking of India's role in this, how has India responded? And you've called them non-statements, so tell me more.
Yeah, I mean, India has been, all of the BRICS countries, BRICS, sorry, not India, have come out and made their case clear about this. It's a clear violation of any kind of norms. So even if India has been quiet relatively on Gaza and very quiet on Ukraine, so it's really sad to watch India go down like this while still cosplay and pretend at being Vishwaguru and the leader of the global South. So India's abdication with taking any kind of a moral call, a values call, which is also important for its geostrategic, geopolitical positioning as the world goes from unipolar to certainly not unipolar, has been so. And India hasn't come out stronger in the way it behaved with Gaza and with Ukraine, with its non-statements. And with Venezuela, again, the first statement was only about its citizens in Venezuela, of which I think there may be only a sprinkling there. The government of India need not worry. And then they've expressed deep concern, but we don't know what they've expressed deep concern over. Is it about the World Cup, or is it about, is it about US actions in Venezuela? And Mr. Modi and his government is obviously terrified also of the whole tariffs thing, but sucking up to Trump has seldom worked. As we know, again, India has 50% tariffs slapped on it. And Trump has again said that he can again escalate tariffs if he's hinted in this very passive-aggressive statement on his airplane, again, when asked a question that Modi is trying to please me, he's a good man, but we can always up tariffs if they don't listen. So I don't know if this diplomacy, which India set out to say that we are strategically autonomous and we are now free and we are just so arrogant and we're so our own version of the wolf warrior diplomacy, if you like, but that doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And it's particularly been shown up in this Venezuela, the two non-statements.
Another important development in the country today, both Umar-Khalid and Sharjeel Imam were denied bail by the Supreme Court in the Delhi riots' larger conspiracy case. What's your take, Seema?
I think it's been quite sad to just watch people without trial starting, without even charges being framed properly, to just be in jail for over 5 years. These are young lives, and you have almost like 1/5 of their lives have already been spent in Tihar jail. So the Supreme Court has reasoned in its order that Sharjeel Imam and Umar Khalid are apparently part of a deeper conspiracy, and the other 4 have got bail, and they haven't. There is a problem with this because while the Supreme Court has so far held that when you talk about bail, you do not kind of argue the case, the merits of the case. So they don't want to go into the merits of the prosecution's case or what the defendants are saying, but bail is a right. And that's what the Supreme Court itself has asserted on personal liberty in some cases at times. But now, while it says that, it is also finding its way out of it by saying the UAPA has its own statute, its own reasons for why bail should not necessarily follow. And clearly, according to the Supreme Court, Sharjeel Imam and Umar Khalid are more kind of guilty than the rest, and they won't be let out. I think this just sits very uneasily with other examples you see of very easy bail going out to people who've been convicted of heinous crimes, such as Ram Rahim, who's been convicted in 2017 and has been out on parole 14 times after that. So one wonders what exactly moves the heart of the criminal justice system. Of course, I mean, the Supreme Court has kind of ruled, but we'll need to watch this very closely in how this case takes place. And we'd like the trial to start so that the truth of the matter can be established. But for now, Umar Khalid and Sharjeel Imam will not be able to go home.
Coming to something else that's happened recently, Bangladeshi cricketer Mustafizur Rehman, he was disallowed from playing the IPL by the BCCI. And he was recently, the auctions happened on December 16, and the winning bid was by KKR, amounting to rupees 9.2 crores. And this is a well-established player. And how do you see the BCCI's decision?
Yeah, it's a very prestigious bid because, I mean, 9.2 crore is the highest any Bangladeshi player had gone for, and it had gone to KKR, as you say, Kolkata Knight Riders, which coincidentally happens to be Shah Rukh Khan's team. So this entire protest coordination, whether it was Sangeet Som, it was Shine INC, it was other leaders of the BJP and of the Sangh Parivar, it was quite odd to watch all their friendly babas and these leaders, all their statements really being talked up in certain sections of the media. And initially, it seemed like the loony fringe is at it. But slowly, when established political leaders, and I must say here, even the Shiv Sena, UBT in Maharashtra and all joined in, this way to kind of weaponize the idea that if you're a Bangladeshi Muslim, you will just be so suspect that you cannot even play cricket. And this is to whip up and keep the temperatures on the infiltrator, quote unquote, slogan that the BJP has given. It's an old kind of a Sangh shibboleth of there being infiltrators and the fear of infiltrators running over the country, and where there is actually no evidence of the numbers being like that. And we've seen how that's emboldened mobs across India to go after anybody who's Bengali speaking. We also had a man from Tripura who was like killed and lynched in Uttarakhand, and the main accuser has still not been arrested. And the Uttarakhand police is denying that there was any racial kind of connotation when that happened. So you have this situation when we've gone after this Bangladeshi player in these supposedly unconnected protests. But suddenly the BCCI, which is now fully functions like the political arm of the BJP, has come up and said that they will release this player, which means effectively that he's being asked to go. And obviously KKR has no choice but to let that happen, and now he won't play. Of course, it should be noted that Mumbai Indians has another Bangladeshi player who will continue to play. But this is not to say that, he is to not play either, but it's quite odd as to how Shah Rukh Khan is not allowed to bring this very good Bangladeshi left-arm bowler in the team. He's gone back. Bangladesh has, of course, not taken this kindly. And they have said that if Mustafizur Rehman, who's also known as Fizz, if it's too unsafe for Fizz, then it's not safe for his 10 other teammates too. So the Bangladesh team will not travel to India for the T20 World Cup. That just means that India is a factor in the domestic politics of Bangladesh. The killings of Hindus there is abhorrent. It should not happen. It has to be condemned in the strongest of terms. But for India to kind of now come up after it's behaving like this with its own minorities and fellow citizens, to come up and make a case with a tone which sounds like as if a Hindu nation is asking Bangladesh to not kill Hindus, doesn't cut the kind of ice that a plural India spoke with authority and asked for Bangladesh to behave itself and to ensure that life was safe for every Bengali Hindu as it is for a Bengali Muslim. So I think that loss of credibility is further kind of, you go two more paces with the cricket thing happening so close to the Bangladesh elections, and Bangladesh has now officially said that it will not travel to India for the T20 World Cup. That just puts India in like really, what are we doing with policing? Pakistanis don't come, Bangladeshi players will not come. Who's it going to be next? Will it be Sri Lanka? Or will it be Nepal? Or will we now suddenly, so Afghanistan is okay, which has the Taliban ruling there. And we know their track record with women and other minorities. So it's very unclear with India suddenly behaving like a bit like a kangaroo court and a random panchayat behaving like this. It really cuts on and it isolates us in the region. The Foreign Minister Jaishankar has already spoken about bad neighbors and referred to Pakistan without taking any names at a gathering last week. And there's China, with which we have a very odd relationship, one of silence from India. And to that, you now add Bangladesh in the mix. So instead of firming up the region and making ourselves secure and making South Asia ours and less inhospitable to Indian ideas and doing things together, it's just made a mess just for the elections. And I hope that it doesn't further make India a factor in the elections and lead to results that may be even worse than what we apprehend now.
Right. Switching gears a little bit and going away from news, Bollywood has produced a ton of war films over the last few years, and each was perhaps more hateful than the last. And in that sea of war films has now come Ikkis, which some say is different, including you. Why?
So, yeah, I mean, I wish we were going away from the news because Bollywood has just responded to political cues like this and almost replicated ruling party agenda. Mainstream Bollywood, Bombay cinema has done that, where there's been a spectrum of wonderful, nice, small films. Well, here's a mainstream film by Sriram Raghavan, one of our finest cinematographers, filmmakers, directors, and he's come up with Ikkis, which is 21 in Hindi, and it is the very poignant story of Second Lieutenant Arun Khetrapal, the youngest PVC winner, the Paramveer Chakra winner, who sacrificed his life in the Call of Duty in the 71 war. And it's a beautiful story based on a real life story where his father, who was also served in the Indian Army, goes back to Pakistan for a college reunion in Lahore. And he meets the same people who killed his son on the battleground. The whole kind of engagement of his with the Pakistani side, with the horrors of war, the bravery of war, has been distilled beautifully like this. And I hate to say this, but India really doesn't have experience of a really big, nasty war in a way that, say, Europe does, which lost like 20 million more. 20 million was just lost by Soviet Russia in the Second World War, but each household was touched by death and war. But I think we have this very cavalier, let's bay for blood, more war kind of thing. But this captures the pathos of war. Your eyes well up when you see the Indian army going, when it's marching, the sappers are going and checking for landmines. There are a whole host of people, just the bravery of the common Indian soldier and the humanity on the other side as well that has been shown very beautifully. So I think bravery and the futility of war, to be able to balance it like that and to show multiple timelines. So there's 1971 happening there. There is also partition. And there is 2001, when after Kargil, the father of Arun Khetrapal goes to Pakistan. That's kind of very beautifully done. And what makes it even more beautiful and poignant is that Dharmendra is playing the role of the father of Arun Khetrapal in his last film. And there's also Asrani in a beautiful cameo. And this also happens to be comedian Asrani's last film. Oh, awesome. So quite nice.
A landmark film of sorts.
Okay. Do see it, yeah.
So, and what is your recommendation for our viewers for this episode?
The recommendation. So, my nail color, which you remarked on earlier on the show, is this brilliant kind of blue-grey, steely thing. This is a tribute to Varun Grover. Varun, this is for you because I saw this color on your kind of nails when he was doing his very nice comedy show on Nothing Makes Sense. He's put out 1 hour, 21 minutes of that on YouTube. And I recommend that everybody kind of sees this. It's sharp. It's very prescient. He's been like alert to things going on and incredibly funny. And the second recommendation is a book, which is a very old book, but I ran into a PDF and I should have read it much earlier. I'm guilty for not having read it, but it's brilliant. It's called Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman. It actually tracks how the advent of television changed the whole business of discourse. So discourse was earlier not entertainment, but everything which is tough, which needs to not be necessarily entertainmentized, becomes like that, and hence called Amusing Ourselves to Death. And I found incredible parallels as we have moved to another level of what the medium of exchange of information is globally and on social media, etc. So I recommend both these things, and with your permission, we'll put both the things in the show notes.
Absolutely.
Your recommendation?
My recommendation is an article that came out in Himal Mag recently, in the last week of 2025. It's about a woman who was kept confined to a 3 by 3 foot bathroom in Haryana by her husband. And the story follows how her release was secured, how the authorities found a way to break into the home, get her out, how she was slowly brought back to life in a way, and why she eventually went back to her husband after all of this. I think it's an important article, firstly, to understand how domestic abuse really plays out, and both the version that we see or experience in cities or in films is such a tiny part of what actually goes on. And the other aspect that stayed with me from the piece is how the woman responds to coming out, and after I think 3 years, 2 or 3 years she was confined. The description of her emerging from that bathroom and then recovering and healing is what I would want our audience to really read themselves. Yeah.
Thank you.
And with that, we conclude this episode of Seema Says, and we'll catch you next week.